Hello, everybody. Thanks, Amy, for the fantastic speech. My name is Liwei, and today I'm going to talk about issues of international students. As these issues have been affecting me individually, I will be recounting several of my personal stories about my own experiences. I came to the United States in the middle of my junior year in high school from Shanghai, China, without knowing much English. And as soon as I landed into that high school in Northern California, I encountered my first doesn't make sense moment. So because I couldn't really speak well or react fast in English, the school administration definitely misinterpreted my intelligence and put me into all the lower level classes, including math and science. And, and also they forced me into that ESL program, which for classes involves in all the reading and writing. And it turned out to be really unhelpful because a lot of people in ESL spoke my native language all the time, and there wasn't much opportunity for me to practice English. And I think the misinterpretation happened to most of the students at ESL because the school didn't suggest us to take SAT or even try to apply for a four-year college. But somehow, one thing leads to another. I got into USC. Thank you. So one of the main reasons I chose USC was because I thought, for me, as someone who didn't grow up here, who didn't speak perfect English, and who didn't know much about American culture, would have a better time because USC has the highest international student population of any university in America. But things didn't go as what I expected because more and more doesn't make sense moments showed up. For example, I didn't know what was a fraternity. I thought people either lived in their residential house or in their fraternity. So every time I showed up in someone's non-USC apartment, I would keep asking, is this a frat house? Is this a frat house? Other than that, the drinking culture here didn't make sense to me either. I remember back in China, ever since I was in 4th grade, I would just show up in the store and pick up alcohol. No, it's not like what you think. I did that for my mom, cooking, and I never thought it's gonna be fun to drink it. So I just didn't understand why people here like to drink so much in college and why that's illegal. So yeah, when things doesn't make sense, it was almost impossible to make conversation with anyone. Plus there was language barrier. So some people I knew from the city or in the school, they were experiencing the same problem, and they chose solely stay in the Chinese international student community. Like what I said, I believe most of the international students who were struggling with language or culture barrier would experience that, but they couldn't really find possible solutions. So they just choose to only maintain friends with people from their own country. And as a result, we see somewhat segregation of a lot of international students on this campus. So in my freshman year, as I saw a lot of people who were similar to me were only socializing with their own community, I chose not to do that. Because of I experienced the segregation-ish activities back in high school, I knew that it was absolutely not beneficial for my language improvement, for my personal growth, and also for the cultural adoption. So despite being clueless, despite being depressed sometimes, and also despite not really being involved, I still put forth a lot of efforts into integration. So here are some stories. So freshman year, in the very beginning of the freshman year, the only group of people who made initiatives to knock on my door were the Bible study groups. So I thought it's gonna be a really great opportunity for me to practice my English as well as knowing American culture. So at one point of my freshman year, I was in 3 Bible study groups at the same time, despite not really being religious. Other than that, so after 2 months living in my freshman year dorm, I finally got to know some of my floormates who were mostly socially awkward guys. And we ended up doing a lot of things together as a group. For example, we went to dinner, went to lunch together every day, and we went to different places in the city together. And we also had an interesting title for ourselves, the Sausage Fest. But I did pick up a lot of English from hanging out with the Sausage Fest. So I think that was really, a step for achieving somewhat segregation, somewhat integration. And if things would be much different now if I didn't choose to take the step. Although I put a lot of efforts throughout my freshman year, I still experienced a lot of difficulty, and the biggest difficulty was still speaking because I couldn't talk as confidently to other people as to, say, my floormates. And a lot of times I would get lost in the middle of conversation when the other person was talking too fast or the other person was talking about, cultural references. And also I would also run out of stuff to say after introducing my name, my major, and it was really up to how nice the other person was to choose whether to continue the conversation or not. So you have to admit there were always those kind of people who's gonna lose their patience during a conversation, and I will feel greatly defeated every time I encounter people like that because I just took it too seriously. So at one point, there was a huge period of time that it was really hard for me to talk to any strangers, especially females. And the academic integration wasn't that easy as well because the language barrier was always overlooked by courses. I remember for my GE classes, I had to spend 4 hours in the reading, but others only took like less than an hour. I still remember Writing 140 class took up more time than all the time I spent in my math and engineering classes. I still remember going to professor's office hour as often as possible. At one point, harassing the professor for begging for mercy. Nevertheless, all the small things I put efforts into finally paid back, and I was able to become, more comfortable with the surrounding, and it improved my speaking skills and social skills, which enabled me to be more involved. So later on, I became an orientation advisor. I joined the leadership fraternity Delta Omicron Zeta, and I also become e-board members, treasuring for 2 clubs. So at this point, I am still not quite satisfied with my current level of integration because a lot of times, as you can see, I still experience some insecurity in my language or culture aspect. But I think my own experience would be really beneficial for those who will or who are going through the same thing. And I think helping international students to integrate will not only be beneficial for the studying abroad experiences, but also it will be ultimately beneficial for the school itself. So here are some examples. The school would enjoy a better reputation worldwide if its students from all over the world enjoy good quality of education as well as social integration. And also international students will be more likely to donate back or be more likely to make other contributions back to the school after they graduate if they consider the school as their second home or vice versa. So there's a bunch of actions in my mind I think the school, USC, should take in order to help international students to integrate. So as an orientation advisor, I have to confess that the 2-day orientation for international students is definitely not enough. What I think the school should not just have a separate orientation session for international students, but also giving them useful information about how to get involved, how to make friends with domestic students constantly and actively throughout the year. And that can be done through residential advisors or even faculty members. Other than that, I think the school should try to mix more international students with domestic students when it comes to housing, because apparently making friends with floormates can be a really good start. Besides that, I think the School Volunteer Center should be more advertised to international students because it really provides great opportunity to get involved with the local community as well as, developing a sense of responsibility of being here. And last but not least, I really think the school should come up with a mentor program that pairs up international students with domestic students who are gonna act as mentors, teach about all necessary information about the surroundings. So I think although it's really up to the individual who choose to get out of their comfort zone or not, the school should provide its best help along with the domestic students. Lastly, if we think outside of USC, if the process of integrating international students can take place in any university in America, it would ultimately make America have more well-educated population. International students will be more likely to stay here if they feel more comfortable with the culture as well as having more American friends, and thus becoming productive elements of the American society. And also if there are more well-educated foreigners in the country, the average education level of foreigners will be greatly enhanced. So America might have a better perception of foreigners, and a lot of stereotypes or assumptions would go away subsequently. On the other hand, for domestic students, if they can make close friends with international students, they will be more likely to develop a sense of inclusiveness, of thinking more perspectives or thinking in others' shoes when they make decisions. So after they graduate and become driving forces of the country, they will be more likely to pass on the inclusiveness into their work and also even policy making and make America more successful in international relations. Although everything I just said were purely based on assumptions, why don't we, students from both sides, all take one step forward out of our comfort zone and make the win-win situation come true? Thank you.